On a warm spring morning in May 2005, in the quiet Missouri town of Pevely, a young woman left her apartment for what should have been an ordinary Wednesday at work. She never arrived. Her name was Jessica Chambers, 23 years old, a pharmacy technician at the local drugstore, known for her punctuality and her bright smile that greeted every customer who walked through those glass doors. By noon that day, when she failed to show up for her shift and didn't answer her phone, her manager called her mother. By evening, when her car was found abandoned in a gravel lot near the Mississippi River overlook, the police were called. By midnight, search teams were forming. And by dawn the next morning, everyone in Pevely was asking the same question. Where was Jessica Chambers? And what happened in those missing hours between 7:30 in the morning and the moment her empty vehicle was discovered? Keys still in the ignition, driver's door standing open to the gathering dusk. Pevely sits in Jefferson County, Missouri, about 40 miles south of St. Louis, where the land begins to roll into gentle hills, and the suburbs give way to a patchwork of small towns, trailer parks, and stretches of farmland that seem to remember an older America. In 2005, Pevely had a population just under 5,000 people. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the high school football games drew the whole town on Friday nights, where the same families had lived for generations in modest ranch houses along tree-lined streets. The Mississippi River curved past the eastern edge of town, its banks thick with cottonwood and sycamore, its waters brown and slow-moving in the spring. Jessica Chambers lived alone in a second-floor apartment on Hickory Street, a quiet residential road 3 blocks from the main commercial strip. She had moved there 8 months earlier, in September 2004, after finishing her certification program at the technical college. Her apartment was small but tidy. Those who knew her said she kept it meticulously clean, with plants on the windowsill and photographs of her family arranged on a bookshelf near the television. Her mother, Carol Chambers, lived 20 minutes away in Arnold. They spoke on the phone every evening. Jessica worked the day shift at Pevely Pharmacy, 7:30 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Her routine rarely varied. She woke at 6 o'clock. She made coffee in the small pot on her kitchen counter. She showered and dressed in the navy blue polo shirt and khaki pants that served as her uniform. She left her apartment at 7:15, walking down the exterior wooden staircase to where her car was parked in the small lot behind the building. A 1998 Honda Civic, silver, with a small dent in the rear bumper from where she had backed into a mailbox the previous winter. She drove the same route every morning, east on Hickory to Main Street, south on Main for 2 miles, then a right turn into the pharmacy parking lot. The drive took 8 minutes. On the morning of May 18, 2005, the weather was mild and clear. The temperature at dawn was 58 degrees, rising to the low 70s by mid-morning. A light breeze moved through the trees. Birds sang in the maples that lined Hickory Street. Jessica's upstairs neighbor, an elderly woman named Dorothy Klein, later told investigators she heard Jessica's alarm clock go off at 6 o'clock, as it always did. She heard the shower running at 6:15. She heard Jessica's footsteps on the stairs at 7:17, which was 2 minutes later than usual. But Mrs. Klein noticed only because she happened to glance at her kitchen clock as she poured her second cup of tea. Jessica got into her car. She started the engine. Mrs. Klein heard the familiar sound of the Honda backing out of the parking space, then the sound fading as Jessica drove down the alley that connected to Hickory Street. That was the last confirmed sighting of Jessica Chambers alive by anyone who knew her. At 7:30, the pharmacy manager, a woman named Linda Torres, unlocked the front doors and turned on the lights. She expected Jessica to arrive within minutes. Jessica was always early, but 7:30 came and went. 7:45, 8 o'clock. Linda called Jessica's cell phone. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. Linda left a message. "Hey Jessica, it's Linda, just checking if everything's okay. Give me a call when you get this." She tried again at 8:15. Again at 8:30. No answer. At 9 o'clock, Linda called Carol Chambers. "I'm sorry to bother you," Linda said, "but Jessica didn't come in this morning and she's not answering her phone. I wanted to check if she mentioned feeling sick or anything." Carol said no. She had spoken to Jessica the night before and everything seemed fine. Carol said she would drive to Jessica's apartment to check on her. Carol arrived at the apartment at 9:30. She climbed the wooden stairs and knocked on the door. No answer. She had a spare key. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was empty. The bed was made. The coffee pot was clean and sitting on the counter, unplugged. Carol noticed Jessica's purse was gone. So was her cell phone, but her laptop was still on the desk in the living room. Her television was there. Her jewelry box sat undisturbed on the dresser in the bedroom. Carol called the Pevely Police Department at 9:42. Officer Raymond Mitchell arrived at the apartment at 10:05. He took a statement from Carol Chambers. He walked through the apartment with her, noting that there were no signs of struggle, no signs of forced entry, nothing obviously out of place. He asked Carol about Jessica's habits, her friends, any recent arguments or concerns. Carol said Jessica had been fine, happy. She loved her job. She had mentioned possibly going back to school in the fall to get a pharmacy degree. No boyfriend currently. No enemies that Carol knew of. Carol gave Officer Mitchell Jessica's cell phone number and a description of her car. Officer Mitchell called Jessica's cell phone from the apartment. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. He issued a "Be on the lookout" for the silver Honda Civic, license plate number Missouri Delta Charlie 7492. At 4:30 that afternoon, a man named Thomas Garrett, a construction worker driving home from a job site in Herculaneum, pulled into the gravel parking area at the Mississippi River overlook on Highway 61, just south of Pevely. He wanted to stretch his legs before the final 20-minute drive to his house. The overlook was a small roadside pull-off with a scenic view of the river. A wooden railing separated the parking area from a steep embankment that dropped 30 feet to the water's edge. Thomas noticed a silver Honda Civic parked at the far end of the lot. The driver's door was open. The engine was off. He walked closer. The keys were in the ignition. A purse sat on the passenger seat. The interior light was on, but the battery was still alive. Thomas looked around. There was no one else in the parking area. No one walking along the riverbank below. He walked to the edge and looked down. Nothing but trees and rocks and the brown water moving slowly past. Thomas called the police at 4:37. Officer Mitchell arrived at the overlook at 4:50. He recognized the license plate number. He approached the vehicle carefully. The driver's door stood open at a 90-degree angle. The keys hung from the ignition, a single key ring with 3 keys and a small silver charm in the shape of a heart. The purse on the passenger seat was unzipped. Officer Mitchell could see a wallet inside, along with a hairbrush, a pack of gum, and a cell phone. He did not touch anything. He called for backup and for the detective division. Detective Sarah Brownlee arrived at 5:20. She photographed the scene. She noted the position of the vehicle, the open door, the keys, the purse. She noted there were no other vehicles in the lot. No tire tracks in the gravel except those made by the Honda and by Thomas Garrett's pickup truck. She noted the purse appeared undisturbed. She opened the wallet using gloved hands. Jessica's driver's license was inside. So was $63 in cash, credit cards, insurance cards, everything in order. Detective Brownlee walked the perimeter of the parking area. She examined the wooden railing. She walked down the embankment to the riverbank, careful not to disturb any potential evidence. She found nothing. No footprints in the mud along the water's edge. No clothing. No signs of a struggle. She walked back up and examined the interior of the Honda more carefully. The odometer read 71,214 miles. There was half a tank of gas. The car was clean inside. A travel mug sat in the cup holder, empty. The back seat held a reusable grocery bag and a paperback novel, spine uncracked. By 6 o'clock, the overlook was filled with police vehicles. Carol Chambers arrived at 6:15. Detective Brownlee asked her to identify the purse and its contents. Carol confirmed they belonged to Jessica. Carol asked where her daughter was. Detective Brownlee said they were searching and would find her. That night, search teams formed. Volunteers from the community, nearly 200 people, arrived at the Pevely Community Center by 7:30. They were organized into groups of 10, each led by a police officer or fire department volunteer. They were given flashlights and reflective vests. They were instructed to search the area around the river overlook, the roads leading to and from the site, the woods along Highway 61. They searched until midnight. They found nothing. The search resumed at dawn on May 19th. Helicopters flew overhead. Dive teams entered the Mississippi River near the overlook, searching the murky water for any sign of Jessica. Cadaver dogs were brought in from St. Louis County. The dogs searched the woods, the riverbanks, the fields surrounding Pevely. 3 days passed, then a week, then 2 weeks. Jessica Chambers had vanished. Part 2. The investigation. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Department took over the investigation on May 20th, the third day after Jessica's disappearance. Detective Brownlee remained the lead investigator, but she was joined by 2 additional detectives, Michael Torres and James McKinney, both veterans with decades of experience. They established a command center at the county courthouse. They reviewed every piece of evidence. They interviewed everyone who knew Jessica. The community response was overwhelming. Flyers with Jessica's photograph appeared on every telephone pole, every storefront window, every bulletin board in Pevely and the surrounding towns. The local news stations ran stories every evening. Jessica's mother appeared on camera, her face pale and drawn, begging anyone with information to come forward. A reward fund was established. Within a week, it had grown to $15,000. Investigators traced Jessica's cell phone records. The last activity on her phone was at 7:19 on the morning of May 18th. The phone had pinged off a cell tower on Main Street in Pevely, consistent with Jessica driving her normal route to work. After 7:19, nothing. The phone was either turned off or the battery had died. Attempts to ping the phone's location after that time yielded no results. Detectives interviewed Linda Torres, the pharmacy manager. They interviewed Jessica's coworkers. Everyone said the same thing. Jessica was reliable, cheerful, well-liked. No problems at work. No conflicts with customers or colleagues. They interviewed Jessica's friends from high school and from her college program. No one knew of any trouble in Jessica's life. No strange phone calls. No one following her. No recent arguments. But then, on May 23rd, 5 days after the disappearance, a woman named Angela Pritchard came forward. Angela worked as a cashier at the gas station on Main Street, 2 blocks from Jessica's apartment. She told Detective Brownlee that on the morning of May 18th, sometime between 7:20 and 7:30, she had seen Jessica's silver Honda Civic pull into the gas station parking lot. Angela remembered because she recognized Jessica's car. But then, Angela said, the car didn't stop at the pumps. It pulled around to the side of the building, near the air pump and vacuum station, and it sat there for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Angela was busy with a customer and didn't think much of it at the time. When the customer left, Angela glanced outside again and the Honda was gone. Detective Brownlee asked Angela if she saw who was driving. Angela said she couldn't see clearly from inside the store. She assumed it was Jessica, but she couldn't be certain. Brownlee asked if Angela noticed any other vehicles near the Honda. Angela thought for a moment. She said there might have been a dark-colored truck parked near the vacuum, but she wasn't sure. She apologized for not being more helpful. This information troubled the investigators. If Jessica had stopped at the gas station at 7:25, she would have been running late for work. But Jessica was never late. Why would she stop? And why park near the vacuum instead of at the pumps if she needed gas? The detectives reviewed the security camera footage from the gas station. The camera covered the pumps but not the side of the building where the vacuum and air pump were located. The footage showed several vehicles coming and going that morning, but the angle didn't capture the area where Angela said she saw the Honda. On May 25th, a man named Robert Gilmore contacted the sheriff's department. Robert lived in a house on Highway 61, about a quarter-mile north of the river overlook. He said that on the morning of May 18th, around 8 o'clock, he had been in his backyard fixing a fence post when he heard a car door slam. The sound came from the direction of the overlook. Robert didn't think anything of it at the time. People stopped at the overlook all the time to look at the river. But now, knowing what had happened, he wanted to report it. Detective McKinney asked Robert if he heard voices or any other sounds. Robert said no, just the single car door slamming. 8 o'clock. That was 30 to 40 minutes after Jessica should have arrived at work. If the car door Robert heard was from Jessica's Honda, what had happened in that intervening time? Where had Jessica been between 7:30 and 8 o'clock? Detectives constructed a timeline. 7:15, Jessica leaves her apartment. 7:19, her cell phone pings off the Main Street tower, the last known activity. 7:25, possible sighting of her Honda at the gas station. 8 o'clock, possible sound of a car door at the river overlook. 4:37, the Honda is discovered with the door open, keys in the ignition. The timeline had gaps, too many gaps. Investigators canvassed the area between Jessica's apartment and the river overlook, a distance of approximately 4 miles. They knocked on every door. They asked residents if they had security cameras, if they had seen anything unusual on the morning of May 18th. Most had seen nothing, but a woman named Patricia Coleman, who lived on River Road about half a mile from the overlook, said she had been walking her dog around 7:45 that morning. She remembered seeing a dark blue or black pickup truck driving slowly along River Road, heading toward the overlook. She didn't recognize the truck. She didn't see the driver. She thought it was odd only because the truck was moving so slowly, maybe 15 or 20 miles per hour, as if the driver was looking for something. A dark truck. Angela Pritchard had mentioned possibly seeing a dark truck at the gas station. Now Patricia Coleman had seen a dark truck near the overlook. Detectives issued a request for information about any dark-colored pickup trucks seen in the area on May 18th. On June 2nd, 2 weeks after Jessica's disappearance, a man named David Hendricks walked into the sheriff's department. David was 31 years old. He worked as a mechanic at an auto repair shop in Arnold. He said he needed to talk to someone about Jessica Chambers. Detective Brownlee sat down with him in an interview room. David said he had known Jessica. They had dated briefly, about a year ago in the spring of 2004. The relationship had lasted only a few months. They had parted on friendly terms. David said he hadn't seen Jessica in months, maybe since last fall. But he wanted the police to know, just in case it mattered, that during the time they were dating, Jessica had mentioned a customer at the pharmacy who made her uncomfortable. A man who came in regularly, always asked for Jessica to help him, always seemed to linger a little too long. Jessica had described him as being in his 40s, tall, with dark hair. She said he drove a truck. David couldn't remember any other details. Jessica had mentioned it only once or twice, always in passing, never with any real alarm. David said he felt guilty for not reporting it earlier, but he hadn't thought of it until he saw Jessica's face on the news again. Detective Brownlee thanked David. She asked him for his contact information and a detailed account of his whereabouts on the morning of May 18th. David said he had been at work. His shift started at 7:30. He had clocked in at 7:28. Brownlee verified this with David's employer. David's alibi was solid. But the information about the customer was new. Brownlee returned to the pharmacy. She spoke with Linda Torres and the other employees. Did they remember any male customer who fit that description, someone who seemed overly interested in Jessica? Linda thought for a moment. She said there were a lot of regular customers, many of them older men picking up prescriptions. But one name came to mind, Marcus Teller. Linda said Marcus came in every month to pick up medication for high blood pressure. He always requested Jessica's help, even if other technicians were available. He was friendly, maybe a little too friendly. Linda said Jessica had never complained about him directly, but Linda had noticed Jessica seemed less comfortable when Marcus was in the store. Detective Brownlee asked for Marcus Teller's address and phone number from the pharmacy records. Marcus lived in Festus, a town about 15 miles south of Pevely. He was 46 years old. He worked as a truck driver for a freight company. Brownlee ran a background check. Marcus had no criminal record, no history of violence. He was married. He had 2 children. On June 4th, Detective Brownlee and Detective Torres drove to Marcus Teller's house. It was a small brick ranch on a cul-de-sac, with a well-maintained lawn and a basketball hoop in the driveway. A dark blue Chevrolet pickup truck was parked in front of the garage. Brownlee noted the make and color. She knocked on the front door. Marcus Teller answered. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair graying at the temples. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt. Brownlee introduced herself and Torres. She asked if they could speak with him about Jessica Chambers. Marcus invited them inside. They sat in the living room. Marcus's wife, a woman named Helen, joined them. Brownlee explained that they were interviewing everyone who knew Jessica, trying to piece together her last known movements. She asked Marcus how well he knew Jessica. Marcus said he didn't know her well. He picked up his medication at the pharmacy every month. Jessica was always friendly. He had heard about her disappearance on the news. He said it was terrible, just terrible. Brownlee asked Marcus where he had been on the morning of May 18th. Marcus said he had been at work. He drove long-haul routes, usually overnight or early morning deliveries. On May 18th, he had left the freight company depot in Festus at 5:30 in the morning for a delivery to Cape Girardeau. He had returned to the depot around noon. Torres asked if anyone could verify that. Marcus said his supervisor could check the logs. His truck had GPS tracking. Brownlee asked if they could see the logs. Marcus said of course. He called his supervisor right there in the living room and authorized the release of his route information for May 18th. The supervisor faxed the records to the sheriff's department that afternoon. The GPS data showed Marcus's truck leaving Festus at 5:32 and arriving in Cape Girardeau at 7:41. The truck remained in Cape Girardeau until 10:15, then drove back to Festus, arriving at 12:03. The timeline checked out. Marcus Teller had been 2 hours away when Jessica disappeared. The investigation continued. Detectives followed every lead. They interviewed over 300 people. They searched thousands of acres of land. They drained a pond near the overlook. They found nothing. No body. No additional evidence. No witnesses who had seen Jessica after 7:19 on the morning of May 18th. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves. Some began to wonder if Jessica had simply walked away, but Detective Brownlee didn't believe it. Jessica's car had been found with the door open, the keys in the ignition, her purse and money untouched. That wasn't the profile of someone starting a new life. That was the profile of an interrupted moment. Something had happened at that overlook, something sudden. By July, the case had slowed. The media coverage diminished. The volunteers stopped searching. The reward fund remained unclaimed. Jessica Chambers was gone and no one knew where. Part 3, The Silence. A year passed, then 2 years, then 5. Carol Chambers never stopped searching. She kept Jessica's apartment exactly as it had been. She paid the rent every month, hoping her daughter would come home. She hired private investigators. She appeared on television shows about missing persons. She maintained a website dedicated to finding Jessica. But as the years went by, the trail grew colder. The tips stopped coming. The private investigators exhausted their leads. Carol knew, in the quiet moments late at night when she sat alone in her kitchen, that Jessica was likely dead. But without a body, without proof, she couldn't let herself believe it fully. In 2007, 2 years after Jessica's disappearance, Carol finally closed out the apartment on Hickory Street. She packed Jessica's belongings into boxes and stored them in her garage. She stopped appearing on television. She stopped updating the website. She told herself she was accepting reality, but really, she was just too tired to keep fighting. Detective Brownlee never stopped thinking about the case. She kept the file on her desk. She reviewed it every few months, looking for something she might have missed. She thought about the timeline. 7:15 to 7:19, Jessica's phone was on and pinging normally. After 7:19, silence. Why had Jessica turned off her phone if she had turned it off? Or had someone else turned it off? And the gas station sighting. Angela Pritchard had said the Honda was parked near the vacuum for several minutes. What was Jessica doing? Or was it even Jessica in the car? For those who have ever doubted someone you love, you know the feeling. The small nagging voice that says something isn't right. The details that don't quite fit. The explanations that seem plausible but somehow feel wrong. Detective Brownlee had that feeling about this case. There was something missing. Some piece of information that would make everything click into place. But she couldn't find it. In 2009, 4 years after the disappearance, a development emerged from an unexpected source. A woman named Teresa Mullins contacted the sheriff's department. Teresa lived in Pevely. She said she had information about Jessica Chambers that she should have reported years ago, but she had been afraid. She said she needed to speak to Detective Brownlee in person. Brownlee met with Teresa on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Teresa was in her early 30s, nervous, her hands shaking as she held a cup of coffee in the interview room. She told Brownlee that in May 2005, around the time Jessica disappeared, Teresa had been working as a waitress at a diner on Highway 61, not far from the river overlook. On the morning of May 18th, Teresa had been working the breakfast shift, which started at 6 o'clock. Around 7:45, a man had come into the diner. He ordered coffee black. He sat at the counter. Teresa said the man seemed agitated. He kept looking out the window. He checked his watch multiple times. After about 10 minutes, he left. He paid in cash and didn't leave a tip. Teresa said she wouldn't have remembered this except for what happened next. A few hours later, when she heard on the radio that a young woman had gone missing and her car had been found at the river overlook, Teresa realized the man in the diner had been parked in the overlook lot when she drove past it on her way to work that morning. She had noticed his truck, a dark-colored pickup, because it was the only vehicle in the lot at that early hour. And then, seeing the same truck at the diner, seeing the man's agitation, Teresa started to wonder if there was a connection. Brownlee asked Teresa why she hadn't reported this in 2005. Teresa said she was scared. She didn't want to get involved. She had 2 small children at home. She didn't want to be a witness in a case that might turn dangerous. But over the years, she said, the guilt had eaten at her. She couldn't stop thinking about Jessica's mother, about the family that never got answers. So she was coming forward now, even though it was years later. Brownlee asked Teresa to describe the man. Teresa said he was white, maybe in his 40s or 50s, medium build, brown hair starting to gray. He wore a denim jacket and work boots. She didn't get a good look at his face. She did remember the truck. It was dark blue or black, an older model, maybe from the late 90s. Brownlee showed Teresa a photo of Marcus Teller. Teresa said it could have been him, but she couldn't be sure. It had been 4 years. Brownlee asked if Teresa remembered anything else. Teresa said the man had scratches on his hands. She noticed because when he reached for the coffee cup, she saw 3 long scratches on the back of his right hand, like something had clawed him. Scratches. Brownlee felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. If the man had been in a struggle, if Jessica had fought back, scratches would make sense. But this was 2009. 4 years had passed. Even if they could identify the man, even if it was Marcus Teller, proving anything would be nearly impossible now. Brownlee reopened the Teller angle. She reviewed the GPS records from his truck again. They still showed him in Cape Girardeau at the time Jessica disappeared. But Brownlee started to wonder if there was a way around the GPS. Could someone have tampered with it? Could Teller have driven a different vehicle that morning? Brownlee contacted Teller's employer, the freight company. She asked if Marcus had access to any vehicles other than his assigned truck. The supervisor said no. Each driver was assigned a specific truck with GPS tracking. Company policy. Brownlee let it go. There was no evidence, just a waitress's 4-year-old memory of a man who might have been Marcus Teller or might have been anyone. The case went cold again. Part 4, The Revelation. In November 2024, nearly 20 years after Jessica Chambers vanished, a phone call came into the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. The caller was a woman named Emily Hartman. Emily said she needed to speak to someone about a cold case from 2005. She said she had information about Jessica Chambers. Detective Brownlee was retired by then, living in Florida. But the case had been inherited by a younger detective, Nicole Patterson, who had joined the department in 2010. Patterson took the call. Emily Hartman said she was calling because her ex-husband, a man named Gregory Hartman, had confessed something to her during their divorce proceedings that she couldn't stop thinking about. Gregory had told Emily, in a moment of anger, that he knew what happened to Jessica Chambers. He said he had been there. He said it was an accident. Patterson asked Emily to come in for an interview. Emily arrived the next day. She was 47 years old, a school teacher, visibly shaken. She told Patterson that she and Gregory had been married for 18 years. They had divorced in 2023. During the divorce, things had turned bitter. There were arguments about money, about custody of their teenage son. In one particularly heated argument, Emily had accused Gregory of being a liar and a cheat. Gregory had responded by saying she had no idea what he was capable of. He said he had done things she couldn't imagine. He said, "I was there when that girl died at the river. I know what happened to her, and you'll never prove it." Emily said she had been too frightened to report it at the time. She was in the middle of a contentious divorce. She didn't want to make things worse. But after the divorce was finalized, after she was safe and away from Gregory, she couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. She looked up the case online. She saw Jessica's face. She read about the disappearance, and she knew she had to come forward. Patterson asked Emily if Gregory had provided any details about what happened. Emily said no. He had made the statement and then refused to talk about it further. Patterson asked where Gregory was living now. Emily said he had moved to Illinois, to a town called Alton, about 60 miles north of Pevely. She gave Patterson his address. Patterson contacted the Illinois State Police. She explained the situation. On December 3, 2024, officers went to Gregory Hartman's apartment in Alton. Gregory was 51 years old. He worked as a warehouse supervisor. He had no significant criminal record, just a DUI from 2011 and a couple of traffic violations. When officers knocked on his door and asked if he would come in for an interview about Jessica Chambers, Gregory didn't seem surprised. He said, "I wondered when this would happen." Gregory agreed to speak with detectives without a lawyer present. He was transported to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, where Detective Patterson and her partner, Detective Luis Ramirez, conducted the interview in a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a camera recording every word. Patterson asked Gregory what he knew about Jessica Chambers. Gregory sat quietly for a long moment. Then he said, "I didn't mean to hurt her." Patterson asked him to explain. Gregory said he had been driving to work on the morning of May 18, 2005. He worked at a construction site in Herculaneum at the time. He was running late. He was driving his truck, a dark blue Dodge Ram, along Highway 61. As he passed the river overlook, he saw a car parked there, a silver Honda. He saw a young woman standing near the railing looking out at the water. Gregory said he stopped. He said he thought maybe she needed help. He pulled into the lot and got out of his truck. He said he approached the woman and asked if she was okay. She turned around. She seemed startled. He said he introduced himself, said he was just checking on her. She said she was fine, just looking at the river. Gregory said he could tell she was nervous. He said he tried to reassure her, but the more he talked, the more uncomfortable she seemed. He said he moved closer, trying to be friendly, and she stepped back. She told him to leave her alone. He said he reached out to touch her arm to calm her down, and she pulled away. She shouted at him to get away from her. Gregory said he got angry. He said he was just trying to help and she was treating him like a criminal. He said they argued. He said he grabbed her arm. She tried to pull away. He said he didn't mean to hurt her, but she lost her balance. She fell backward. Her head hit the wooden railing. The sound, Gregory said, was awful, a sharp crack. She collapsed. Gregory said he panicked. He checked her pulse. There was none. He said he didn't know what to do. He was scared. He thought if he called the police, they would think he had attacked her. So he made a decision. He picked up her body and carried it down the embankment to the river. He said he placed her in the water and watched the current carry her away. Patterson asked Gregory why he left Jessica's car with the door open and the keys inside. Gregory said he didn't think about it. He was panicking. He just wanted to get out of there. He climbed back into his truck and drove to work. He said he clocked in at 8:15, 30 minutes late. His supervisor had asked him where he had been. Gregory said he told him traffic. Patterson asked Gregory if he had any proof of this account. Gregory said no. It was just the truth. Patterson asked why he had confessed to his ex-wife during their divorce. Gregory said he had been drinking. He was angry. He wanted to scare her. He said he regretted saying it the moment the words left his mouth. Patterson asked Gregory if he would consent to a search of his property. Gregory said yes. He said he had nothing to hide now. On December 5th, investigators searched Gregory Hartman's apartment in Alton. They found nothing of evidentiary value related to Jessica Chambers. They contacted his former employer in Herculaneum and obtained his employment records from 2005. The records showed Gregory had clocked in late on the morning of May 18th at 8:14. The records also showed Gregory had been fired from that job in June 2005 for repeated tardiness and insubordination. Patterson contacted the Illinois State Police forensic team. She asked if there was any way to search the Mississippi River for remains after nearly 20 years. The team said it was unlikely. The river was vast. the current strong. If a body had been placed in the water in 2005, it would have traveled miles downstream within hours, possibly all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. The chances of recovering any remains now were essentially zero. But Patterson didn't need a body. She had a confession. On December 10, 2024, Gregory Hartman was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter in the death of Jessica Chambers. He was extradited to Missouri. His bond was set at $500,000. The arrest made headlines across the state. After nearly 20 years, the Jessica Chambers case was finally solved. The community of Pevely reacted with a mixture of relief and grief. Carol Chambers, now 71 years old, appeared on the local news. She said she had always known her daughter was dead, but now she had confirmation. She said she didn't feel closure because closure wasn't possible, but she felt something. A weight lifted, a question answered. Gregory Hartman's defense attorney argued that the confession was coerced, that Gregory had been manipulated during the divorce and had made a false statement to his ex-wife in a moment of anger. But the timeline fit. Gregory's late arrival at work, the scratches a waitress had seen on a man's hands at the diner, the dark truck multiple witnesses had mentioned. Investigators also found that Gregory's truck had been sold in 2006 and had since been scrapped, so physical evidence from the vehicle was impossible to retrieve. In March 2025, Gregory Hartman accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. At the sentencing hearing, Carol Chambers read a victim impact statement. She said her daughter had been a kind, gentle person who had never hurt anyone. She said Gregory Hartman had taken her daughter's life and then let her family suffer for 20 years without answers. She said she hoped he would spend every day of his sentence thinking about what he had done.